Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands to have her name on the house that her boyfriend is buying. Am I wrong for buying a house and only putting my name on the deed? I've been with my girlfriend for over 3 years now, and we've talked about how it would be great to have enough saved up in the next 5 years for a house deposit. Well, last month, I got a pretty decent inheritance, enough to either buy a place outright or at least put down a big deposit and get a mortgage. So I brought it up with her, mentioning that with this money, I could get a house sooner rather than later. But I also told her that since I'd be funding it, I'd want to put it only in my name on the ownership. She wouldn't need to pay rent or anything like that, just chip in for utilities. She thought this was unfair since the plan was always to buy a house together. I suggested a middle ground. I'd pay the deposit now, then she'd cover the mortgage until her payments matched my deposit, and we'd put both our names on the deed. Or, if she preferred, we could wait until we both had enough to go halves on the deposit. She wasn't keen on either of those ideas and argued that since I have the money now, we might as well get a house together and stop wasting money on rent. I repeated that if we did buy now, I'd want to be the sole owner unless she's willing to contribute through a mortgage to match my deposit. But she still felt that it should be both of us on the deed, regardless of who's putting in the cash up front. I pointed out that I'd offered several options where we'd both eventually own it, but she seems to just expect a straight-up joint ownership without having to put any money in up front herself. Am I wrong for buying a house and only putting my name on the deed? You're the jerk. My boyfriend and I planned to buy a house together, and he ended up pulling this same stunt, deciding eventually that he wanted it in his name because he was the one making the down payment. Long story short, I'm no longer with him. If you're committed to me and we plan to buy a house together, my name deserves to be on that house. By not putting my name on it, you're basically saying that you want the option to throw me away whenever you feel like it. Sorry, but I deserve more than that. If you're not serious about your relationship, then just let her be free to go find someone who will be glad to put her name on the house, because you seriously sound like you have commitment issues. No jerks here. This seems like more of a relationship issue than a financial issue. Sounds to me like she wants the commitment. Maybe she's thinking that if you're not willing to put her name on the house, then you're keeping her at a certain distance. 3 years in, marriage could be on her mind, and that could be influencing this decision. That's a tricky topic to address. With my wife, I didn't hesitate putting her on the house. She didn't pay any of the mortgage. I didn't care because I planned on spending the rest of my life with her. Just some things to think about. Not the jerk. I was in a similar position a few years ago. Fiancé threw a huge fit because I wouldn't put her name on the house I was buying with my own money. She didn't work, and I'd provided for both of us for years. It was a nightmare getting her to leave once I caught her cheating and finally had enough. She told me she wouldn't leave and I'd have to call the police if I wanted her gone. They weren't much help. I still had to legally evict her, which took months, and during that time I had to deal with her daily tantrums, her breaking stuff, throwing things at me, etc. Police never took any of my calls seriously since I'm a big dude and she was very petite. They literally laughed when they got here, thinking it was funny. I never did any of that to her, but you know they wouldn't have been laughing if I had. Eventually she was gone, thank God. But if I had put her name on the house, like she had tried to force me to, I would have had to sell it and give her half of the money. Now she's with another guy, and I pray for him every night. Lord knows he's going to need it once she shows her true colors. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Does anybody remember back before people completely lost their minds? Am I the jerk for telling my best friend that I'm pregnant? I, 33 female, have been in a close relationship with N, 31 female, for about 8 years. We've been through a lot together, and for the past year and a half, I've supported her through her infertility journey. N has been through 2 rounds of IVF, but unfortunately, nothing has worked. She has PCOS and can't seem to get pregnant at all. We both started our relationships around the same time, and in the past, I told her that I planned to start trying for a baby by the end of last summer. I even asked if she'd want to know if I got pregnant, and she said I could tell her. A couple of months ago, her second round of IVF failed, and understandably, she was devastated. She told me she didn't want to discuss pregnancies when we met, so we didn't. At that point, I already knew I was pregnant, but I kept it to myself. About 2 weeks later, N called me with news. Doctors had identified a possible cause for why IVF wasn't working for her, and she had started treatment with plans to try again in a month. I was thrilled for her, and we scheduled a time to meet up in about 10 days. Since she was the one to bring up the topic again, I decided I would tell her about my pregnancy during our meetup. I was already 10 weeks along, and with a public announcement coming soon, I wanted her to hear it directly from me. When we met, we talked about her situation for a bit, and then I told her I was pregnant. Her reaction was unexpectedly cold. She just said, "Oh, congratulations then," followed by, That was fast, huh? Her tone caught me off guard, but I tried to give her grace, considering everything she's been through. Although I hoped she might be happy for me, I understood, and I gave her time and space, not reaching out for a month. A month later, I texted her to ask how an exam at work had gone. In response, she sent me a 4-minute-long audio message saying she was offended that I'd shared my pregnancy news after she specifically asked me not to discuss that topic. She also said she didn't want to hear about it from me or see me for a while. Her message was a shock. I explained that since she had brought up her treatment again, I assumed she was optimistic and would be able to share in my happiness. I was hurt that she seemed to be deciding when and how we could be friends. That was a month ago, and we haven't spoken since. I think about her often and worry about how she's doing, but I'm also hurt that she doesn't want to be part of my life or my babies. If she does decide to reach out again, I'm not sure if resuming our friendship would be healthy. So, am I the jerk? Additional info. We didn't meet just to talk about her treatment. We had set up the meetup earlier since we were both on summer holiday and couldn't meet before. When we get together, we usually talk about everything going on in our lives. At that time, she was not undergoing an IVF treatment. Doctors had found an infection in her uterus, which they thought might be preventing her embryos from implanting, and she was being treated for it with antibiotics. No hormones were involved, just antibiotics, and she was responding well with plans for another IVF round soon, this time with much better odds. It was a big development, but she was feeling impatient. How did I tell her? When we met up, we started by discussing her life in general, not anything medical, just catching up. At one point she asked, "How about you? What's new?" I told her I had something to share, and she immediately guessed, "You're pregnant." She likely remembered I had planned to start trying by then, so I confirmed, yes. Her reaction was cold. I only talked about my pregnancy when she asked a few questions, and then we moved on to other topics. She told me about her treatment progress with the antibiotics and mentioned she was considering surrogacy. As always, I listened and was there for her. After that, I didn't bring up my pregnancy again, nor did I send her any ultrasound pictures, and I gave her plenty of space. I hope this clarifies some things. Not the jerk. It's tough. I'm very sympathetic to her pain and the stuff she's going through, but she was going to find out eventually. She was probably never going to be emotionally ready to hear you tell her directly, but the alternative was for her to find out via social media, as you said in your post, or for you to just turn up to a hangout one day visibly pregnant. There was no nice way for her to find out, and you tried to do it in the least painful way possible. She has to work through those feelings and appreciate that you tried your best here. It is what it is. It's not her fault that she can't get pregnant naturally, obviously, but she can't spend the rest of her life resenting people who do get pregnant, or at least if she does, privately resent it. And if this is something she can never get over, she has to find ways to manage that feeling and not to express it publicly. Right. It's not her fault that she's having trouble getting pregnant, but it's also not OP's. I completely agree that she was never going to be emotionally ready to hear that. She needs to understand that just because she's struggling right now, that doesn't make OP less deserving of happiness. Life still goes on regardless. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. That said, try to be patient with her. I've known people going through struggles like hers, and it basically breaks them mentally. It's quite possible that down the road, she will realize that you were in an impossible situation and that she treated you badly. No jerks here. Pregnancy, especially a first, wanted pregnancy, is extremely exciting. You showed a lot of grace with holding off on telling her, but you're correct that she would have found out soon, and that probably would have made her feel worse. I'm not sure how you delivered the news to her, but in my opinion, the best way would have been to frame it as bad news and follow up with the promise that your interactions won't be dominated by pregnancy and baby talk. Of course it isn't bad news, but it was going to hit her the same as bad news. The situation she's in is painful. I was dealing with infertility for a while, not going as far as IVF though, and being around babies or pregnant people was really hard. I couldn't smile, and I hated how grumpy I must have seemed to everyone. She was not your friend, but just an egocentric person thinking that the entire world runs around herself. Was it a better idea to not even have your baby just to make her happy? If you didn't tell her, she would have discovered it weeks later regardless, and she would have found something to complain about. It's better for you that she moved herself away on her own. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook after my boyfriend tried to critique my cooking with a literal PowerPoint presentation? Plus final update. So this happened a few days ago, and I'm still trying to process it. For context, I, 28 female, have been with my boyfriend who's 30 for about 2 years. We live together, and I've always done most of the cooking because I genuinely enjoy it, and he claims he can't even boil water without setting off the smoke alarm. The other night, I made one of our favorite meals, and while we were eating, he got a weird smirk on his face. He then says, You know, I've been taking notes. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but then he said, No, really, I made a presentation. I still thought it was a joke until he got up, connected his laptop to the TV, and opened a PowerPoint titled, Improving Our Home Dining Experience. I was in disbelief as he went slide by slide critiquing my dishes. Slide 1, too much garlic. Slide 2, pasta consistency. Slide 3, more salt, less sauce. The kicker was slide 8, which was just a photo of Gordon Ramsay facepalming with the caption, What he'd think. I was stunned. I told him if he had such detailed opinions, he should cook himself. He tried to backtrack, saying it was all in good fun and that he was just trying to help, but I wasn't laughing. I haven't cooked since, and now he's been living off cereal and takeout. He's sulking, saying I'm overreacting and ruining the joke. So Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to cook after my boyfriend presented me with a PowerPoint critique of my cooking? Update. After reading your comments and taking some time to process this, I decided our relationship needed a serious talk. I sat him down to discuss how his presentation came across as not just unfunny, but pretty disrespectful. You know, typical mature relationship stuff. Well, what does he do? He smirks and goes, Oh, I was prepared for this. He actually grabs his laptop, connects it to the TV again, and presents me with another PowerPoint titled, How to Take a Joke, a Comprehensive Guide. Yes, folks, he made a whole slideshow explaining why I needed to learn how to chill out and appreciate humor. Slide 1 featured a meme of a clown putting on makeup with my name plastered over it. Slide 2, a bullet point list titled, Why Your Overreaction is Hilarious. Slide 3 was titled, How I'm Clearly the Comedian in This Relationship. At this point, I was too stunned to speak, but then he pulled out slide 6, Things you can do while not cooking because you're mad. The audacity, right? As if he really thought he'd win me over with this next level presentation. Spoiler alert, he didn't. So I did what any rational, PowerPoint-loving person would do. I made my own. I stayed up all night crafting a presentation called Why It's Time to Move On, a farewell guide. It had everything. Flowcharts mapping his incompetence in the kitchen, pie charts illustrating my happiness before and after the great presentation debacle, and my personal favorite, slide 9, a gif of Gordon Ramsay yelling, Get out. This morning I set him down and went through my PowerPoint with the same energy he had given me. His reaction was priceless. He started with that same smirk, but lost it somewhere around slide 4, Top 10 Reasons You're Moving Out Today. By the time I got to the Resources for Finding Your Own Apartment slide, he was packing a bag. Now, before anyone worries, yes, he did actually leave. And no, I didn't even have to threaten him with slide 12, which was just a photo of me blocking the Wi-Fi router. So yeah, we broke up, and I'm single, happy, and cooking meals for myself without any critique except my cat's judgmental stare. And to those who said I should make a breakup PowerPoint, just know your wish has been fulfilled. I still can't believe how all of this went down over the course of one single weekend, but I now feel pretty good about myself. Thanks for all your comments and support. Oh, and fun fact, some of you are right. He actually is a business consultant, so making PowerPoint presentations is quite literally his day job. I guess he took bringing work home to a whole new, unwelcome level. I'm contemplating divorcing my perfect husband over pants. We got married quite young, and it's been 20 years since. He's a good dad to my daughter from a previous relationship, and we're raising our younger son together. He's supportive, he cooks, he cleans, and he takes care of our home. He even makes time to date me, which I appreciate. The one issue that's persisted over the years is his temper. If something doesn't go as planned, or if he's irritated, he'll start yelling, not directed at anyone in particular, more like shouting into the void, if you get my meaning. And just as quickly as it happens, it usually passes. When I was younger, I could tolerate it and brush it off, but now it's really starting to bother me. None of us are perfect, and I used to have a bit of a temper myself, but with time, I've learned to think before I act and to handle my emotions differently. Recently, my closest brother lost his battle with cancer. On the day of the funeral, things started off on the wrong foot. My daughter and I were almost ready to leave when my husband decided to get in the shower. I figured it would be quick. He's a guy after all, and usually doesn't take very long. But then he noticed his jacket was wrinkled and tried to use the steamer, which didn't work. He started yelling at it, getting frustrated, so I went and ironed it for him. He was supposed to drive, but then he couldn't find his keys or his hat and gloves, leading to more shouting. When we finally got into the car, I realized he was wearing dark blue jeans instead of a black suit. I pointed out that my mom would be upset if her son-in-law showed up to the funeral not dressed properly. That set him off again. He stormed back into the house, yelling, and returned wearing pants he complained didn't fit him. At that point, I decided to drive instead. I was exhausted by his antics already. As we were leaving, he realized he'd forgotten his wallet, so he got out of the car and stomped back into the house again. When we finally made it to town to pick up the flowers, we were already 20 minutes late. While walking into the shop, he suddenly turned around, looked me in the eye, and hissed that he'd rather split up than ever wear uncomfortable clothes for anyone else's sake again. I was stunned. The funeral was a blur after that, and I don't know if I cried more for the loss of my brother or the loss of my husband. Now I feel numb. I can't see a way forward. I understand that he may have been grieving too, but I feel like he crossed a line, and I'm not sure I can forgive him for how he acted that day. He hasn't said a word about it. No apologies, no explanation, no checking in to see how I'm doing. He's just ignoring the fact that, for the first time ever, he threatened to divorce me over a pair of pants. Edit. This situation has escalated more than I could have imagined. To clarify, no, he's never mistreated us. He doesn't insult us during his outbursts. It's just a way of coping with difficult situations. His response is to shut down, which doesn't help either. We don't tiptoe around him, and he doesn't need me to get his ducks in a row. Usually, when he gets loud, we jokingly ask if he's building something. It's hard to convey in a short description, but it's not as bad as it may sound, and that's not just me saying it. Our generally happy life makes it hard for me to ask for help from friends. I'm also a bit reserved, and since our culture doesn't encourage sharing personal matters or going to therapy, I thought I'd share my problem here. And yes, I have considered divorce. When he hissed at me, my first thought was, then why wait? Let's split now. I'll definitely talk to him about therapy options and figure out how to move forward from here. In the past, when I pointed out things he needed to change, he made an effort. So I think this is overreaction on both sides, and it might have more to do with grief than who we actually are as people. No, I'm sorry, but if there was one day to keep his toddler tantrums to himself, it was the day of your brother's funeral. He sounds emotionally immature, and he couldn't step outside of his little daily issues to realize that this crap doesn't matter, and he needs to keep it together for you. He let you down big time. When it mattered, he was more concerned about his ill-fitting pants than causing you any more emotional distress than you were already going through. You needed him, and he made a hard day even harder. I understand why you feel like you can't come back from this. You were in pieces, and he took his anger out on you. I feel heartbroken just thinking about this situation, to be honest. Am I the jerk for refusing to quit my job because my boyfriend thinks the corporate world is soul-sucking? I've been dating this guy who's 27 for 2 years now. He's seriously anti-corporate, constantly going off about how capitalism is ruining everything and how anyone working a normal job is just brainwashed. Meanwhile, I, 25, female, am actually doing pretty well in my office job. It's not my life's passion, but I enjoy it. I'm good at it, and it pays the bills. About a year ago, he started really pushing me to quit my job. According to him, I need to break free from my slave mindset, and as he puts it, find myself. He keeps going on about how we could live this carefree, spontaneous life, following our souls, with no responsibilities. He has this vision of us living off the grid, totally independent. But whenever I ask him how we'd actually make it work, he gets super vague and just tells me I don't understand what true freedom is. There's never a real plan, just going with the flow. A few days ago, he gave me an ultimatum. He said either I need to quit my job and wake up to real life, or he's done because he's tired of dating an office zombie. To make it worse, he claims that my so-called chains are stressing him out and holding him back. I tried explaining that I actually like the way my life is. My job is steady, and it's my paycheck that often covers our rent and food, not his random side hustles. When I told him I wasn't going to quit, he stormed out. Now half of our friends are telling me that I'm missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime chance to live my best life, while the other half think he's just trying to guilt-trip me into abandoning everything for his fantasy. So, am I wrong for choosing stability and not dividing into his free spirit lifestyle? Because honestly, it feels like someone's gotta be the adult here. It sounds like he's the one draining your resources and holding you back. Free time isn't that fun when you have $0. Set that free spirit free. I mean, alternative lifestyles are cool, and I'm envious of them often as a fellow corporate drone, but they also require a pretty rare set of circumstances to work comfortably. You either need a well-paid freelance or influencer role or a good amount of startup capital. He may hate capitalism, but at the end of the day, money makes the world go round, and he'll find true freedom without any cash is a difficult path to walk. I'm also confused as to what you're missing out on by breaking up. What is this dude providing that literally anybody couldn't provide? You could decide a week after dumping this loser that you want the van life, and then it would be open to you to pursue that, without this anchor on your finances. Not the jerk. Sounds like a loser. All those grand plans of living off the grid, blah blah blah, are for trust fund influencers who don't live in reality. Life costs money, and money comes from somewhere. Living in a van down by the river, delivering DoorDash might work for him, but it doesn't make you wrong. Let him go and focus on your own happiness. I only have one thing to add. Do not loan him money to fund his off-grid life. You know he's going to try to guilt you into it because you held him back. And all those friends telling you to go with him can fund him. My Karen ex used me to sign for her new apartment, so today I canceled it. I, 25 male, have been on and off with my first girlfriend, 28 female, for the last 3 years. I've always ended the relationship, sometimes on good terms, sometimes just by stopping talking to her. I've always cared deeply for her and her kid, to the point where I'd take a bullet for them. Over the years, I've spent over $20,000 on getting her an apartment, helping with bills, furniture, and everything in between the years. We've been talking for a few months once again recently, and I fall for her again every time. I just co-signed for another apartment for her to get her out of her toxic family's house. She was set to move in on December 8th. However, yesterday I wasted 5 hours driving with my phone dead to pick up a bed and furniture for her kid, only to get there and not be able to get it because of the rain. I get home and finally charge my phone, only to see she's texted 3 times asking what time I'll pick up the furniture. Then a simple good night text from her, and that's it. I felt used all over again. Feeling like crap, I couldn't sleep. So I texted her asking where I stood on the relationship and if she actually cared about me. 2 hours later, and she's only opened it and not even responded. I called her out on it, and she said she was busy at her girlfriend's house staying the night. So I told her I didn't feel appreciated or loved at all. With no response, I didn't sleep much at all. Feeling like this is just going to be another left turn into the same stuff from the past, I canceled the lease, and now she can't get an apartment on her own with her credit. I don't know what to feel because I feel like a jerk, but I didn't want to feel used again. Like I was always going to be the last thing on her mind. Edit. She's always been the one to reach back out to me even when I've been in a different relationship. I know my actions were impulsive and immature, but they came from very biased feelings that I never really healed from in our past together. During our first stint of being together, after getting her a new apartment and furnishing the entire thing to help her get custody back of her kid, things turned for the worse. She and her daughter got sick back to back. She wasn't able to work, so I paid her car note 2 months in a row, her car insurance and rent, while also trying to pay my rent. I also would grab her groceries and gift baskets to only drop off at the door and leave because she couldn't see me so I wouldn't get sick. This continued for 3 months. So eventually, I picked up another job to make sure I could afford her stuff and my rent. The only thing that kept me going was writing a love note every week and slipping it under her door. This was the one thing that kept up the romance because most of the time she found them adorable and would ask for more. Eventually, after she got a speeding ticket and wanted me to pay for it, something in me flipped, and that was the first time I said I wouldn't pay for something. That was our first breakup, even though I paid for the ticket and wished the best of luck. I just couldn't do it anymore. After all of that, I never got consolation from her for it because she would always tell me she didn't like bringing up the past. You were being used. Thank goodness you realized it. Please move on and find someone who deserves you and won't take advantage of you. Am I the jerk for not treating my stepkids equal to my son? When my husband and I got married, we had an extensive prenup, and we agreed that we would each be responsible for providing for our own kids. He came from a marriage where his ex-wife milked him for cash, and I also liked the idea of separate finances. We each pay our own bills, groceries, and the mortgage we split 40-60, him 60, me 40, based on the fact that he has 2 kids and I have 1. I understand that to some people it might seem a bit roommate-ish, but I've loved it and I think it works out great. I don't care about the money he wastes golfing because it's his money and not mine, and I can get expensive sushi all the time. Growing up, my parents would always yell at each other about finances, nitpicking each other's spending. When my husband and I got married, I was in grad school and he worked in finance. He lost his well-paying job and now makes 50% less, whereas my career has flourished in recent years. My son turns 15 soon and he's been asking for a Model 3. I plan on getting it for him because I think he deserves it. My husband recently came to me upset because my son was talking about how excited he is to get the car. That upset his step-siblings who haven't and won't be getting cars. My husband said he wants to change how our household bills are split. He wants me to pay 80% and him 20%. His reasoning is because with his pay cut and his ex-wife still taking a large chunk in child support, he isn't able to golf or live the same lifestyle as before. He also wants me to buy each of my stepkids a car this Christmas. I basically told him he's out of his mind, and he complains that his ex-wife used him for cash and made him pay all of the bills, but that's what he's trying to do to me. He didn't really know how to respond to that, but isn't talking to me now. I kind of find it funny that when I made significantly less money, he had no issue with our finances being split, but now that he's the one making less, it's an issue. Am I the jerk for not wanting to buy my stepkids cars and fund the family? He wants me to top off their college funds too. Edit. I am a positive role model in my stepkids' lives. We're pretty close. I go to their sporting events, plan their birthday parties, etc. But they have 2 living parents who are more than capable of fully supporting them if they tried hard enough. So I just don't feel like it's my place. The kids all know that my husband is responsible for my stepkids' cars and college, and I'm responsible for my sons. They're just disappointed with their dad right now because their friends all have dads who bought them nice cars, which has made my husband kind of mad. I don't think having cars and college funds are a necessity though, more of a nice thing to have if your parents can afford it. So I feel like my husband should either step up to the plate and get a better job or get off my back. Not the jerk. And you've made super fair points about how he was fine with the split when he was making more. I don't see why you should have to finance his lifestyle now. But I don't see how you two are going to maintain your marriage at this point unless your husband comes around and is back to being fine with the original agreement. Either way, it's going to cause problems. If your stepkids are getting a car, it should be bought by their parents, and you could help with a small amount if you'd like. But buying 3 cars all by yourself is ridiculous. Info. How often do your stepkids stay with you? OP. My stepkids are with us the majority of the time. They see their mother every other weekend, as well as whenever they ask to. I can afford to buy the 3 cars, I just don't want to out of principle. I don't think he would buy my son a car if the roles were reversed, which is okay. He's my son, and I acknowledge that I'm responsible for providing for him. Honestly, I think the cost split is unfair. Although he has 2 kids to your 1, if he's paying child support, it means they're not living with you full time. I think you should revisit that at least down to 50-50. But that doesn't make you the jerk, especially when he was fine with keeping his money when he made more. As for the cars, no, you don't have to buy his kids cars or pay for their college. They have 2 parents to do that. However, I must say this. If you buy your kid that kind of car for his first car, that's insane. Just nuts. The first car is a practice car. He needs to work up to it with a nice used car, and then maybe a new one for graduation or something. I will say this whole relationship does not strike me as much of a marriage with all this division. I mean, do you not even like your stepkids? It's just not nice to flaunt wealth in anyone's face, but especially in front of people that live with you and don't get to share in it. And a Model 3 is flaunting it. No 15-year-old deserves a car that expensive. OP. A Model 3 isn't expensive. It's safe and new. I wouldn't want my kid driving around in an old beat-up car and end up broken down on the side of the road. I can't exactly take money with me to the grave, so I'm not sure why I wouldn't spend it on my kid. Its base model is around $40,000, and I didn't say get a beat-up car, I said a used car. There are plenty of nice, safe, reliable used cars for half that cost. It's your money, but $40,000 on a car for a teenager screams that you have lots of disposable income. And apparently, you have no desire to spend any of it on your husband or your stepkids. Again, you don't have to, but if you love them, you should want to. I'm 26 female. My fiance, 28 male, told me I wouldn't be able to pull anyone else, and I'm offended. My fiance and I have been together for almost 5 years, engaged for 6 months. We've never had issues where one of us was mad for a long time until this, and he, my mom, and friends think that I'm overreacting. I had a dream some nights ago that I ended up dating a famous actor by accident. We both had dreams where crazy things happened and told each other about it. I told him in the morning and we laughed about it. However, he made a comment about how my dreams are always extremely delusional. I asked him to elaborate, thinking it would be something funny, and instead I was met with a comment about how I wouldn't be capable of pulling someone half as attractive as said actor, let alone him. I was taken aback and he doubled down and told me to be realistic, that most men wouldn't even look my way because I look like I'm already taken and stopped looking interesting some time ago, and now even more with the engagement. I told him that I don't want any men to look my way, but the implication of his words hurt me. He told me it was irrelevant because we're together and I wouldn't leave him and to stop being offended over something I asked, and left. For the record, my weight, hair, and general appearance have stayed the same, and I'm low-key high maintenance, so this isn't me letting go of myself or something. I called my mom for reassurance, and she agreed that I was overreacting. I called my friends for the same purpose and was met with the same response. I feel very hurt because I love my fiancé and I find him very attractive, and I know other people do. I'm grateful that he chose to be with me, and that makes me value him even more. I thought he thought the same about me, but apparently he thinks I wouldn't ever leave him because I can't pull anybody. That somehow is making me feel like he doesn't value me as I do. And worst of all, that I may be wrong about how I feel, but I can't control it. Am I overreacting? If so, how can I manage this so this doesn't affect us long term? It's been almost a week and he's still being short with me because I look like I'm miserable about a petty thing. I just want things to go back to normal. Edit. The actor was Adam Driver. I've had a few people asking me who it was. Edit 2. My closest friend group is a 4-girls group where I'm the only one with a relationship and that has ever been in one. Another detail someone messaged me to include, I do have other friends, but I haven't told them anything given the response I got from my closest circle. Finally, I have a long history of being super sensitive. I've cried over minor things my whole life, which is why it's not surprising for my closest ones to immediately call me out on it. I'm on therapy addressing that, my pushover nature, and my self-esteem issues. Thank you to everyone who's commented and given me support. I will be forcing him to talk to me today to see if this is in any way salvageable or if I just lost half a decade of my life. I don't know what your friends or your mom are on, but I think that's a crappy comment to make to your future wife. It's an insult if you ask me. Maybe I could have got past it if he had apologized afterwards. Instead, he doubled down and said you're overreacting and you should get over it. He's getting too comfortable in the relationship. He's trying to lower your self-esteem so you will think that no one else will want you other than him. He's also telling you he doesn't find you as attractive anymore. Don't let these comments slide. When someone starts saying these things, I would take it seriously as it's a big red flag. This kind of behavior will only get worse. For me personally, it would be a deal breaker because I love myself more than my partner, and I couldn't tolerate my partner seeing me that way and saying things like that. You are definitely not overreacting. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.